The first whispers of autumn brought an unmistakable chill to Crescent Bay, signaling the arrival of the mysterious black lantern on the cliff. Each year, the townspeople would wake to find it there, unlit and ominous, but always present. No one knew who placed it, nor did they question its existence. However, with its appearance came an undeniable truth. Every time the lantern was lit, someone from the town would disappear without a trace. 17-year-old Ethan Matthews had always dismissed the old stories. "It's just an old superstition," he would say, but the recent disappearance of his cousin, Clara, had shattered his indifference. Clara had vanished just days after the lantern appeared again. Ethan couldn't ignore it anymore. He knew something dark was at play, and he was determined to uncover the truth behind the cursed lantern and its deadly pattern. Ethan stood at the base of the cliff, gazing up at the lantern that hung in the distance, a dark silhouette against the fading twilight. The town had already begun to buzz with hushed rumors about Clara's disappearance. "It's the lantern," they whispered. "It's always the lantern." The more Ethan thought about it, the more it became clear. Every year, without fail, someone went missing. But this year felt different. The lantern was lit. The light flickered faintly, casting long, crooked shadows across the bay. He felt an uneasy chill creep down his spine. There was something about the way it glowed this time that unsettled him more than ever before. Ethan made up his mind. He was going to the cliff, to the lantern, to find out who or what was behind it all. Ethan's investigation took him to the town library, a place he hadn't visited in years. The librarian, Mrs. Hawthorne, was a relic of the past. She had lived in Crescent Bay her entire life and knew every corner of its history. "You want to know about the lantern, don't you?" she asked, her sharp eyes narrowing as she looked at Ethan. He nodded. "I need to understand why people keep disappearing when it's lit. This has been going on for years. Someone has to know something." Mrs. Hawthorne leaned back in her chair, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It's tied to the ocean, child, to the Leviathan." Ethan's eyebrows furrowed. "The what?" "A creature from the depths, older than the town itself. They say the lantern is a beacon. It calls to the creature, and when it answers, well, that's when people vanish." The next day, Ethan met up with his best friend Olivia to tell her what he'd learned. She was skeptical, but the look on his face made her think twice. Ethan had always been the rational one, the skeptic, but now he sounded terrified. "You seriously believe there's a monster in the ocean?" Olivia asked, incredulity in her voice. "It's not just a monster, Liv," Ethan replied. "It's something ancient, tied to the lantern. I have to stop it, or more people will disappear. Clara might still be alive if I figure this out." Reluctantly, Olivia agreed to help him. "If you're going to do this, I'll be there. But we're in this together. No one faces monsters alone." Ethan and Olivia spent the following days combing through old town records, newspaper clippings, and journals in search of any clue that might lead to the lantern's origin. Among the dusty shelves of the library, they discovered a map, an old, frayed piece of parchment tucked inside a forgotten book. It marked several locations along Crescent Bay, but one stood out, a cave beneath the cliffs, deep underwater, where the lantern's light seemed to have its source. "This is it," Ethan said, his finger tracing the map. "The lantern's connected to this cave. We need to find it." "But how are we supposed to get there?" Olivia asked, her voice trembling with doubt. Ethan's eyes hardened with resolve. "We dive." Before setting out, they visited a local diver named Max, a grizzled man who had spent his life in the waters of Crescent Bay. He was known for his deep knowledge of the ocean's mysteries. When Ethan explained their plan, Max's expression darkened. "That cave you're talking about? It's cursed," he said, his voice gravelly. "People have gone down there before, but they didn't come back. You're talking about something no one should mess with, especially not a creature like that." "We have no choice," Ethan insisted. "We need to stop whatever's behind the lantern." Max sighed and handed them a pair of diving masks. "You're making a mistake, but I won't stop you. Just know this, if it gets too dark, if you hear something, don't stay. Swim back up fast. There's a reason that place has been left alone for centuries." The day of their dive arrived, and the ocean was unusually calm. Ethan and Olivia geared up and descended into the cool, clear waters of Crescent Bay, their only light the flickering of their underwater torches. As they neared the entrance to the cave, an unnatural stillness enveloped them. The water seemed to grow colder, and the faintest ripple disturbed the silence. Ethan reached out to touch the jagged rocks around the cave's entrance, and a strange sensation washed over him, like he was being watched, like something far below had sensed their presence. Olivia gripped his arm, her breath shallow. "Ethan, this doesn't feel right." But he pressed on. "We're close. We have to see this through." Inside the cave, the air grew thick with an unearthly dampness. The walls seemed to pulse, faintly vibrating with some kind of hidden energy. As Ethan and Olivia ventured deeper, the light from their torches flickered and dimmed, casting long, eerie shadows that seemed to move on their own. Suddenly, they reached a chamber, a vast, dark space filled with strange, ancient markings on the walls. At the center of the room, a massive stone pedestal stood, and upon it was the black lantern, its flame flickering wildly despite the lack of wind. The air grew thick with tension. Ethan could feel it now, something ancient and alive, lurking in the dark. The lantern's flame suddenly flared brighter, casting an unnatural light throughout the cave. The temperature plummeted, and the sound of rushing water filled the chamber. Ethan and Olivia turned toward the entrance, their hearts racing. From the depths of the cave, something stirred. A creature, its form like a twisted serpent, with eyes glowing a fierce green. The Leviathan, the ancient sea monster that had haunted Crescent Bay's legends, was real. Ethan's heart pounded as the creature loomed closer, its massive form eclipsing the light of their torches. "We need to go, now," Olivia screamed. But the creature wasn't finished yet. Panic surged through Ethan as he turned to flee, pulling Olivia with him. The water was thick with the Leviathan's presence, the creature's enormous form shadowing every move they made. They swam toward the entrance, but the cave seemed endless. The beast was closing in fast, its jaws snapping just inches from their heels. Finally, they reached the mouth of the cave, and they burst into open water. The surface seemed impossibly far away, but Ethan pushed through the pain, his muscles burning with every stroke. Behind them, the Leviathan's roar echoed through the cave, but it couldn't follow them out into the open ocean. Breathless and terrified, they emerged on the shore, collapsing on the rocky beach. Sitting on the beach, gasping for breath, Ethan tried to process what had just happened. The Leviathan, the creature that had haunted their town's history, was real, and it had been awakened by the lantern. "What do we do now?" Olivia asked, her voice trembling. Ethan stood up, eyes burning with determination. "We destroy the lantern. That's the only way to stop it." "But how?" Olivia asked. "That thing is too powerful. We figure out how to break its hold. There's got to be a way." Ethan spent the next several days researching every detail of the lantern's history. He combed through journals, talked to local historians, and even revisited Mrs. Hawthorne. It was clear that the lantern had been a tool for controlling the Leviathan, an ancient binding ritual that had long since lost its power. Each year, the lantern was lit and the creature was called forth, but the ritual had grown weaker over time. The key to ending it all was simple but daunting. The lantern needed to be extinguished permanently. But to do that, they would have to destroy the source, the ancient magic that powered it. And they had to do it before the creature found a way to break free. After much deliberation, Ethan and Olivia came up with a plan. They would need to return to the cave and destroy the lantern at its source, but this time they wouldn't be alone. Max, the diver, agreed to help them. With his knowledge of the waters, they hoped to destroy the lantern before the Leviathan could fully awaken. "We'll need explosives," Max said, gathering materials, "something powerful enough to break the stone and disrupt the magic. But we'll have to be quick." Ethan nodded, resolute. "We have no choice. We have to end this." The final dive was set for the following evening. The ocean was calm, but the air around them was thick with tension. As they descended into the dark, cold waters, Ethan felt a sense of foreboding, as if something was waiting just beyond their sight. When they reached the cave, the lantern was waiting, its flame dancing in the dark. The Leviathan's presence was stronger now, a palpable force pressing in on them. Max set the explosive near the base of the pedestal, while Ethan and Olivia kept watch. Everything was ready. All they had to do now was detonate it. As Max set the timer on the explosive, The water around them seemed to thrum with a dark energy. The Leviathan was close, its eyes gleaming from the depths, watching them. Max gave them a signal. "Go," he shouted, and the three of them swam toward the exit, hearts racing. As they reached the mouth of the cave, the explosion rocked the water, sending shockwaves through the ocean. The cave collapsed, the pedestal shattered, and the lantern's flame went out. But the Leviathan wasn't finished. The Leviathan roared in fury as the cave began to collapse. Its massive form surged toward them, faster than they could swim. Ethan could feel the beast's presence closing in, its enormous shadow engulfing the water around them. "We have to get to the surface," Olivia screamed. With everything they had, they surged upward, the dark form of the Leviathan snapping at their heels. Ethan's breath burned in his chest, but he didn't look back. He couldn't. They reached the surface, gasping for air, but the Leviathan was still close behind, thrashing in the water, furious at the disruption. Ethan knew the creature would never stop hunting them unless they sealed it away for good. The answer came to him in a flash. They needed to use the last remnants of the lantern's magic to break the creature's hold once and for all. The water around them rippled with dark energy, and Ethan raised his hands, invoking the ancient ritual he had learned. The water seemed to boil with power as Ethan performed the ritual. The Leviathan thrashed, its massive jaws snapping at the air, but it was too late. The seal had been broken, and the creature was pulled back into the depths, its power drained, its rage quelled. But as the creature vanished, Ethan felt something heavy inside him, a strange price for the power he had unleashed. The lantern's magic had cost him something. He could feel it. The town of Crescent Bay was quiet once more. The lantern was gone, its flame extinguished forever. The Leviathan was no more. People began to return to their lives, slowly forgetting the terror they had once faced. But Ethan knew the truth. He would never forget what he had done. The magic of the lantern had changed him, had taken something from him that could never be returned. As the sun rose over Crescent Bay, Ethan stood on the cliffside, looking out over the calm water. The town was safe, for now at least. The lantern was gone. The Leviathan was gone. And as the first light of dawn bathed the bay in gold, Ethan knew that some mysteries were best left unsolved, but the ocean would always hold its secrets.